That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Jack Kirby's Black Panther Volume 2. So once again, Jack Kirby. Idea Factory is... I was having a conversation with Comics Kid 2099, and yeah, I love that phrase. Jack Kirby is an idea factory. Unfortunately, and I don't mean this to be insulting or anything like that, unfortunately, this man just does not know how to write dialogue. Or, even how to plot. There are just so many things that, come out of nowhere and are, at best, morally questionable. Okay. Black Panther, trying to fly home to Wakanda, sees two guys in a boat that is, capsized. So he quickly swoops down and saves them and offers to drop them off on the coast, but they're mobsters, and they try to hijack him. So he, in the attempt to, ensure his safety, he ends up crashing the helicopter. He pulls one of them out, but can't get back in time to save the other. So he drags the surviving one across the desert, almost dies of thirst, but stumbles onto a movie set. A very, very elaborate movie set. And they save his life and give him water and safety and all that stuff. And then he's like, no, I must go. I must get back home. And they're like, well, you showed up with a mobster, so we called the police, and they're gonna ask you some questions. And he just fucking blows up their movie set. He just gets a hold of a control board, launches some missiles, and turns on all their machines and shit, and just seriously blows their fucking movie set up. Then steals a Jeep and takes the fuck off. Then, as he's driving the Jeep down the road, he gets shot at by a plane, so he pulls over and flags him down. And then just knocks out the pilots and steals the plane and starts heading back to Wakanda. And nothing comes of this. He just, endangers innocent people who saved his life, and then steals their shit, and then knocks out soldiers who, hey, we got this felon guy that was in league with a mobster, and he just took off in this stolen Jeep, so he just knocks them the fuck out. It's kind of messed up. Just a little bit. Yeah, it's a little odd. Anyway, that was very strange. But most of this revolves around the guy that tried to form a coup of Wakanda while T'Challa was gone, but touched vibranium and got turned into a freakish monster. Touched raw vibranium, because that's the distinction. I should have adjusted this while I was getting my soda, but let's try that. Oh, that's a better shot. Anyway, I know you probably don't care, but I do. I criticize Steve for having bad frames in his captain's logs. I should probably not do the same thing. Just a quick side note before I get into more of the plot. Jack Kirby apparently thinks all old men look alike, and he just colors them differently, because that looks exactly like Highfather. I found that amusing. Anyway, there's stuff I really like about this, and as I read more of it, I got more accustomed to it, but it's still really wonky. When was this coming out? This had to be 70s, right? Black Panther by Jack Kirby Volume 2 contains material originally published from Black Panther 8 to 13 Um, I don't know. When was Black Panther? It had to be the 70s. So this, for the 70s, this writing's really, really off. I've got respect for Jack Kirby, but he is just not a great writer. He needs I have no problem with Jack Kirby script or helping to plot. Like the general ideas, the beats of how the story should work are fine. It's the scripting. He needs someone else to script, or needed someone else to script. Because some of this just comes out of nowhere. Okay. So while he's gone, his family, the rest of the royal family, has to step in and be the Black Panther as a team. And that's really fascinating. They actually work really, really well together. And they're chasing down the vibranium monster to go inject him with basically a cure before he can reach the mound. And T'Challa just, suddenly just got back to Wakanda just in time, even though they don't really need him right now. But he gets back to Wakanda just in time, and then he just takes it from him and says, "Fuck you, I got this." And I'm like, dude, it's... Thematically, it's a problem because we just proved with the Panther team that Wakanda doesn't need T'Challa. But also, it's just kind of awkward that they don't really fulfill much of a function in the story after that. They're just... I mean, it's not a lot of story after that. He goes to the mound, fights the monster, and gets kind of like trapped inside of it with him. But that's really odd. And then it goes to another story where T'Challa somehow got psychic powers from being in the collapse vibranium mine. 70s. This doesn't fit with that era very well. It's not too far off, but it still doesn't quite fit in. Anyway. Excuse me. So there's this guy, and he's, basically taking people and absorbing their life energy for himself. And T'Challa comes across him using his psychic powers, and, one of his family members has been kidnapped, and he has to go after him, and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. This is just... there's interesting stuff, but he had to just add a superpower. And then they just had another writer and artist come on for the last issue. So I don't even feel like it's appropriate to talk about it at that point. I don't know, man. It works for me, and other times it doesn't. The art is undeniably gorgeous. But when you just talk about the plot, there's a lot of really weird shit going on that has no explanation. And, I read Jack Kirby's Fourth World Omnibus Volume 1, and it has the exact same problem. Where the plot worked better than that, but the scripting, the dialogue was still way all over the place. And got to be really, really difficult to get through. And that's what's going on with this. I have a lot of respect for Jack Kirby, but he still was not a writer. He was brilliant at coming up with concepts. He was literally an idea factory. But when you hear people say, Stan Lee didn't create this character, Jack Kirby did. Sure. But Stan Lee at least knew how to write him. Jack Kirby would create a concept for a character. I feel like this dude, I don't know Jack Kirby at all. I never met him in person or anything like that. But I feel like this guy fired at a mile a minute. I feel like if you were in a room with him, he would be, you know, 10 steps ahead of you in the conversation. You know, you would say one thing and, like, you wouldn't be able to finish any topic of conversation with Jack Kirby. I feel like if you were talking to him, he would go from one thing to the next at a bolt of lightning. You know, you'd be talking about something and he would jump in and say, oh yeah, that reminds me of this. And you'd be like, oh, that's really interesting. And then you'd gotta get off on something else. Because I feel like that's symptomatic of his writing. He just doesn't know how to take his time with stuff. He doesn't know how to focus on things and how to make stuff work in a timely manner, in a way that functions properly, in a way that has any kind of structure. And then is like, it'd be one thing if the plot itself didn't have these massive holes in it. Because then I could just say, oh well, he's a good writer he's a good writer as far as plots go and ideas and character creation. He's just not good at scripting. That'd be a one thing. But no, he's just not a good writer. He's a great idea man. George Lucas and Jack Kirby should have hung out. And I hope that isn't insulting. George Lucas gave us Star Wars, and he gets way more credit than that for that than he deserves, since a lot of it wasn't him but other people's input on the projects. But George Lucas gave us Star Wars. It was still his baby. And that's, you know, all the problems that come after that are because he got too close to it and no one else got to touch it. And I feel like that's what's going on with Jack Kirby, is when he's too close to something and no one else is allowed in on it, it's not the best. It gets really difficult to follow, and they're just gigantic leaps. Which I understand that's part of comics at the time, but, you know, it's worse here, is I guess my point. Let's try to end on a positive, though, and get back to the art. Because, again, just, like, everything about it. Anyone else? That would have just been some lines on a shield. There would have been vertical or horizontal lines, or maybe some kind of, you know, very simplistic design. That's a fucking tattoo. You know, I could see someone getting that as a tattoo. Despite complaining about his look for old men, it's alright. I still think he has problems with people. I don't think he did the colorization, but someone did some weird stuff to... Where's my frame? T'Challa's face looks really weird in that. I can hear my neighbors talking. I wonder if you can. T'Challa's face looks really, really weird. Like, he's supposed to be sunburnt and covered in sand, but that doesn't look like what that's supposed to be. Yeah, I don't know. There's great art, but still, that even has its problems, like anything from the time. So, I don't know. I'm sorry, Jack Kirby. The good news is you're dead, so this doesn't hurt you at all.
That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.